Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and I'm here today at the Rock Island Auction Company taking a look at some of the guns they're going to be selling in their upcoming June of 2017 regional auction. And today we're going to take a look at a US World War II .22 caliber training rifle. This is specifically a Mossberg Model 44US, and it went into production in 1943. Now before this, and in fact in a recent video, we took a look at the previous U.S. military .22 training rifle. That was the model of 1922 M1 and M2, designed by John Garand, built on a 1903 Springfield receiver. They are fantastic rifles, very high quality, very accurate, very expensive, pretty complicated as .22s go. And by 1943, the US was needing a lot more of this sort of thing, and they wanted them a little faster and a little cheaper, and maybe you didn't need quite that really good match grade quality for, the more simplistic basic training that the US Army was starting to do more and more of as World War II was really underway. So they started looking for a cheaper option. And what they came up with was the Mossberg. Now this rifle had been on the commercial market. Mossberg had already developed it. It was being sold as the Model 44B, and the US military came in and said, that looks like the thing, but we want it even a little bit simpler and cheaper. And in its military form, well, that's what Mossberg did, accommodated them quite well. It got rid of the walnut stock and gave it just a simple plain birch stock. It has a plastic trigger guard on it, which is kind of an unusual component for the 1940s. Today, this particular one actually fits pretty well, but today those are kind of known for being fragile and shrinking a bit. It's an early, not totally stable plastic, I suppose. But plastic trigger guard, which is nice and cheap. The simple birch stock is nice and cheap. A simple front sight. The rear sight on this particular example is actually one of the early ones. The first batch that they made used a Lyman Model 57 MS adjustable peep sight. And it's a pretty nice sight, but it was, again, more expensive than the government really wanted. And so they would, shortly afterwards, the second batch of rifles that were delivered, Mossberg had taken the time to develop their own rear aperture sight that was simpler and cheaper, and in fact dropped the cost of the rifle by $2, although this version was $16.65 for the government, and the new version with the simpler Mossberg rear sight was $14.65. So $2 was actually a reasonably substantial drop in the price. And this made a lot more sense for the US military than those fancy, expensive, and complicated model of 1922 training rifles. In total, well, these would be produced starting in 1943, and the 1922s ceased production in 42, so these pretty much picked up right where those left off. They would be in production until 1949. Just during the war alone, they produced 56 or 58,000 of them, so a lot. They made more of these than the earlier 1922s, which is to be expected, and they really did the job quite well. Now, let's take a closer look at, at the sight in particular, because that's really the most complicated part of the whole gun. Got some barrel markings here, OF Mossberg & Son, New Haven, manufactured in Connecticut. And with the simplifications for the military, Mossberg gave these the designation of the 44US. It is for .22 long rifle. And as you can see, this is a US property marked rifle. So many of these were, because they all went into military service, or a great number of them, between 43 and 45. And then later on after the war, they would eventually be surplused and sold through the DCM, the Department of Civilian Marksmanship. We have that US property mark repeated on the receiver itself, along with the serial number. I believe these started at 100,000, or maybe even 105,000. My understanding is it was only the first 1,000 or 1,500 that had the Lyman rear sights, so this one's a little high of a serial number unless they started at 105,000. Because this does in fact have the Lyman adjustable rear sight. So we have elevation adjustments right here with this dial. We have windage adjustments here, and you've got a scale on the top right there to track your movement. And we have, as usual, an adjustable or a removable rear aperture sight. It's just threaded in here. So that's the actual sighting aperture. And that's pretty typical for this style of rifle. It's a very effective type of target sight. As for the actual mechanics of the gun, it's a bolt action, so no semi-auto system here, just manually operated. Has a safety lever here at the back of the wrist. This would have, I believe, originally been red, and it's worn off. That's fire, and over on that side is safe. Magazine is in the bottom, and the magazine catch here is actually a latch on the magazine itself. There's that. And a nice, heavy, large, wide stock so that you can sling up with this and get a nice, stable firing position. You should take a little bit of a quick look at the plastic trigger guard there as well. You know, these guns weren't going to be in like actual combat service, and so they didn't really have to have durability for anything beyond range practice. So plastic made sense. It was a lot cheaper to make, and it did the job. Then here is Mossberg's revised version of the rear sight. So definitely, I think you can tell they are much more simply made. Still has elevation adjustment there, windage adjustment right here, and it still has a threaded in aperture. The one interesting thing that this does that the Lyman did not is that it actually folds to the side, so that gets it kind of out of the way. I guess that makes these easier to store, protects this sight a little bit. Gives us a really good way to look at the actual sight picture, I suppose, right there. So this is the much more common version of the sight that you will find on, well, that these rifles were issued with. I'm sure a lot of the civilian owners, after these were surplus, may have replaced the sights with nicer, more precise models for their own use, but this is what the military primarily used. I guess I should also point out these had a 7-round magazine as opposed to the 5-round magazine on the Springfield rifles, for what that's worth. 26-inch barrel, they weighed about 8 pounds, so a 22 certainly can weigh a lot less than that, but the idea here was marksmanship training, and weight to the gun does actually help with that in a lot of respects. So this did the job. This was used for new recruit training by the US military, and for all its simplicity, it's really a quite nice 22 target rifle. It's got a good quality barrel on it, it's got a nice set of sights, and did the job just fine. In fact, it still does the job just fine today. If you're looking for a rifle that is both a nice target 22 and also a cool piece of US military history, well, this is a neat example of both. So if you want this one in particular, of course it is coming up for sale at the end of June. Take a look at the description text below, and you'll find a link to Rock Island's catalog page on this one. There are a couple others in the auction as well, so you can browse through the catalog and look for those. Anything you decide you'd like to have, you can place a bid over the phone or online through their website. Thanks for watching.